Hello there, my name is Mark, aka The Canardian, and this is episode 76 of Holocron Chronicles. Charlie is out exploring the galaxy once again, taking him away from the show, but I have an absolutely amazing guest who has been summoned. Master Alan, welcome back to the show.
It's fun to do this a second time. I'm sorry I didn't get to hang out with Charlie this go around, but we're going to have a good time all the same. I was like mentally prepared to do my I have been summoned thing, but then you tipped it and I was just like, oh, now I can't keep a straight face. I have been summoned.
There we go. I needed that. I needed to get in there. I'm sorry I spoiled the intro there.
I know, like, for you as a content creator, you know, so like I'm an introverted person. I'm a nerdy dude, but as a martial arts instructor and now as a content creator, I have to pretend to be an extrovert, and so the Master Alan character is very much a character, and I cannot take myself seriously, and so like it helps that it's like when I film it, I'm not immediately re-seeing what I just filmed. Like when I'm teaching, I have to look at myself in a mirror, so I have to watch myself being ridiculous. It's a lot harder to stay in character. On camera, it's a lot easier because I'm not having to like witness myself be a doofus or, you know, or ridiculous or whatever. And the I have been summoned thing, like I had the few times where that bit like played well, it was just like, all right, okay, this is going to be one of the things I do now. You'll get your turn. I get to show you guys this later. I don't know if anybody actually gets to see it, but yeah, this is going on the site. It was supposed to be on the site today, but then I got busy with lots of things. It's that time of year. But yeah, so like the I have been summoned thing, like that just, it became okay, this is a bit that I have to routinely do, and if I have to watch myself do it, it's a lot harder to do.
It's really great. I love the sneak attack videos where someone will be talking about something. I'll be just flicking through TikTok or whatever and not really paying attention to like whose name is at the bottom. And I'll be watching something and someone will be talking about something completely random. I'll be like, this is kind of a weird thing to show up on my For You page or whatever. And then boom, I have been summoned. And you just kind of just jump out of a curtain or you do whatever kind of like little intro. I love it. It always keeps me on my toes, whether, and it's, sometimes it's lightsaber related. Sometimes it's completely like out of left field, like someone talking about something completely different. And then you just pop up and it's like, oh, there he is. Okay. It's fantastic every time. If someone's not following you, they should be. And we're going to learn all about you in like 2 seconds. But first, I have to thank all of our Patreon supporters. You can join us at Patreon. Nice, thanks. I was, I've been working on those segues. You can join our Patreon for free for 7 days. You can check it out at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. I want to thank all of our patrons from the $1 tier to the $2, $5 best friends. Your lightsaber's making noises. I just knocked mine off my table. That's all good. But I want to thank all of our friends with benefit tier, the Corian HD, John Sadorth, the Phoenix Sisters Cosplay, and Brendan Myers, as well as our BFF tier, Sean, Stella, and Henry Nias, Missy Merchant, and Andy Milliken. Thank you all so much. Again, you can find a free 7-day trial at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite and support us at whatever level you deem worthy, if that's your thing. I will mention that we do now have ad-free audio and video. There's going to be ads on the free tiers. If you're listening to this on regular podcast feeds, you're going to notice an ad plumb in the middle of this thing. And that's basically so we can pay for the recording software that we use and all that kind of stuff. But Patreon supporters get that for free. So ad-free audio and ad-free video on patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. If that's your jam, go throw a buck our way and you get to listen to this without Zencaster pitches and all that kind of shenanigans.
And it sounds like a really good deal.
I think so. I think it's pretty great. So if that's your thing, go over there. And if not, hey, that's fine too. Give us a like and a share and subscribe on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. And also, very relevant to this episode, you can also find my Level Up Lightsaber affiliate link in the show
Mm.
notes. So if you want to get yourself a saber, you can. And that's another great segue to Master Allen telling us all about what you do. If someone missed you the first time around, and I hope they'll go back and listen to your introduction because it's a great introduction to like how you got into Star Wars. And I think people, people like in my age range, a little bit up and possibly even a little bit down, um, you mentioned getting into them through VHS and all that kind of stuff. It's a great kind of like throwback to that. Like we didn't have streaming services. We hardly had DVDs. It was all recorded off of TV. Great episode. Go back and listen. But for now, I
Highly
want to hear
recommend.
all about Level Up Sabers and what's been going on over there and with all your content and all that and just everything.
Um, well, Cliff's Notes. In right about this time of year, 3 years ago, I went viral for stitching off of somebody's content. There was somebody that had a stick in their bedroom, and they were asking for recommendations on a lightsaber that was going to be better than that random stick that they had found in their bedroom. And I was like, I can make that funny. And so then I I grabbed like the 5 second, the 5 second stitch is what TikTok lets you do, and so I grabbed 5 seconds and then I filmed 54 seconds of my own. Went through. This was back before there was the auto caption feature, so you had to like type the text in manually to get your captioning, and that was something that like I did every single time, and some other stuff, like um and guaranteed that the lightsabers from my shop were better than a stick. And 250,000 people saw it in like 3 days, and
Jesus.
it just like it changed. It changed the business. I went from like,
Wow.
oh yeah, like I'll sell a few here and there online. That'll be cool. But like mostly this business is gonna like, as I grow my class, Louisville, Kentucky, St. Matthew's Martial Arts. We have a lightsaber class. Classes are Saturday and Sunday. So if you were listening from the Bluegrass State, um, we'd love to have you. I don't know why this is so. People that are not from Kentucky, this isn't going to make sense. It is called the Bluegrass State. Kentucky's a Commonwealth. Now there aren't that many Commonwealths in the United States, and so we say 50 states because reasons. But there are Commonwealths. The difference between a Commonwealth and a state is like the spelling. Um, but but yeah, so the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Bluegrass State. I don't. It doesn't make sense to me, but I'm an outlander, and so it's possible that like somebody from Kentucky could explain it to me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, KFC better than Chick-fil-A. I will die on that hill. Um, but like I thought that the web shop was going to just be like, oh, I'll make a little bit of money off of my students, provide them a lightsaber that I have vetted and approve of, and here we go. And then I just took off thanks to TikTok, and
Amazing.
have had a few other like what is functionally a commercial go viral since, and like and so my little like, oh, this will be a quaint little like thing. This will be like a fun thing that I do 2-3 nights a week, has become a like I post to TikTok 2 to 3 times a day every day, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to get good at the Instagram. I am not good at the Instagram yet, but I'm getting there. I'm getting closer.
It's slightly different. Yeah.
It is, the vibe is
It's
different.
weird. Yeah.
I'm super
Very
not
much
good at
so.
YouTube. Um, I have
Yep.
no idea what to do with YouTube. I have tried to do YouTube shorts consistently, and I don't know what people want, and
Yep.
it's not working out. But if you guys could follow me, maybe that'll change it. I don't know.
There you
Um,
go. Yeah, everything will be linked in the show notes. So any kind of link that you want to follow, you can. For me, it's the opposite, man. I cannot like. Every once in a while, I'll do something on TikTok that I think the numbers are kind of going up in a good way, and then they'll kind of peter off. Instagram, I find the vibe over there. I just get it a little bit better, but it's weird, man. It's
it's where you end
weird.
up with a community of people that will respond, that will type things when you make a video.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like,
That's
and
it.
it is pulling teeth to get people to type things when I make an Instagram video. When I make a TikTok video, it is much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, it's strange, and it's strange where like people gravitate, and sometimes it moves from like from one platform to another. Yeah, for me, it was TikTok for a while when I first started getting into Star Wars content creators, or Twitter. I mean, sorry,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's kind of completely moved. And then luckily, I found this little like group on Instagram. But I'm also very happy that I stumbled upon your stuff because I can guarantee
shit
that this
that's
sucker
a really
is
nice
better than a
pixel.
stick.
That was
It's
pretty. I like that startup. That was good.
that I don't know what that was because this is an RGB.
Oh,
Um,
it might just be the way that
I
the because it has like a little bit of an off time when it lights up. It doesn't just
right,
like immediately. It has like a little and so it might just be between the angle and the camera because
yeah,
um
that was
it's
weird.
the do you have the blur background thing on?
I do.
That's it.
Yep. I wonder if that's it.
That's why.
That was cool. I mean, yes, this is a very expensive and fancy RGB lightsaber that I accidentally jammed into the grass a week or so ago. You can actually
It
still see
happens.
some dirt from where I
Yeah,
tried
yeah,
to catch
yeah.
it. I was flipping outside and tried to catch it and just knocked the thing. And it like I'm talking like stood up in the grass like this. I was like, shit, that's not
Arthur's
good.
sword. Yeah.
But it's still working and it's better than a stick.
There you go.
Um,
That's all that
they're great.
matters.
They're great. So you're running a promotion right now
Oh, we're
in
gonna
the
go right to
store?
that. All right, yeah. And
Sure.
so we are on 12 days of Sithmas. I did this last year to like mixed response. But like 12 days of Sithmas seems like a really obvious like tie-in, at least to me. Like that's like a like yeah, have fun with that. Like Labor Day weekend, I do Saber Day weekend, and so 12 days of Sithmas runs till December 12th. You use the code Sithmas and you get 12% off. And so there's just like there's a bunch of stuff on the site depending on what you want from a lightsaber or what you need, whatever. It's just an easy like oh, I save a little bit of money, get yourself something nice. I've got so many things I've added to the site in the last 6 weeks. It's hard to keep track of it all. I had a video recently go like do very well. That was because I have a beam saber now. For anybody out there that's a Gundam fan, I
Yeah.
now have like it's the Gundam beam saber. The sides of the handle light up, bunch of stuff. It's like it's really good.
Very
If I
cool.
had a 3D printer, I'd already be figuring out how to do like the cosplay. Um,
That's been my TikTok lately, actually, is like 3D printers. And I'm like, I just bought a new fridge. I have zero money for anything. I was saving up for a new lightsaber. I wanted your space pirate thing because I have this pirate
oh, that's a
Jedi
good one.
cosplay.
Yeah.
And I need and the whole like, I'm ready to go. I got this. And then my fridge was like, nah, not today, son. So that sucked. But
Fahrenheit.
yeah, it's pretty much. Um, it's but I love seeing like the deals and the different like you're always mixing things up, you're always getting something new. It's always great to see.
Well, and like I work with a manufacturer that they produce a lot of stuff constantly, and it's more than I can. Like what they already produce is more than I want to have to carry because it's just like it's silly to have inventory shelves where you have like two of something, and I want to work out of inventory as much as I can. There's ways I've had to modify that this year
Mm,
because they came out with an electronics upgrade that's freaking awesome. You can control volume and color and other stuff from an app. It's easier to add sound fonts. RGB now has a bunch of features that used to be pixel exclusive, stuff like that. So it was huge. It was awesome. But then I was sitting on a ton of inventory that I had like previously accumulated with the old electronics, and I felt like it was not genuine to sell that at retail price. Um, and so like that has forced me to um, do a little bit more drop shipping, do a little bit more like pre-order cycle kind of stuff this year to kind of offset some of that, like the stuff that I just had to sit on for a while and like take to conventions and do specials. And
right.
for this holiday season, I have these very special display lightsaber boxes. And basically, it's like the all the character sabers that it's the last of my clearance stuff. Um, that I've got it boxed up with like a saber stand and all that kind of stuff. So then it's ready for me to just slap a label on it. And actually, we were talking about this the other day.
Yeah.
But it's I think I've got like 15 left at this point that, especially for people that want to have a display saber, it's, they'll be able to get it quickly, which is really difficult to do with lightsabers this time of year.
Yeah.
And some really cool characters. Like I've got a couple of the thin neck Kenobis left, and the Rey Skywalkers and the Darth Maul, which is like an awesome, because it's both sides of it. Um,
Oh, nice.
it's really pretty.
Yeah.
And then if you want to get
That's
blades
awesome.
for them, you can get those separate. Like, but the way I've got it set up is to make it so that if somebody is just like, oh man, I need this in a rush, then I can
Mm,
print the sticker the night they order it, slap the sticker on the box, and then drop it off the next day. Um,
amazing.
because the nature of my business, it's really really difficult to do that, because I have to cut blades manually. I have to measure blades and other things like that. So if somebody orders 4 or 5 sabers, then there's a whole lot of, okay, I got to match this aspect of the order to this, make sure that it's packed correctly, all that kind of thing. And so most of the time when I do like the really really good specials or put something super
Mhm.
on sale, what I'm doing is making it so that I can have the box ready in advance, and then I just put a sticker on it.
Right.
So then I can get them to people faster, and so then I don't have to spend as go as deep into the night getting it prepped.
Right.
Which, side note, anybody out there that's thinking about running an e-commerce business, it's there's so much that you don't think about from like an expenses standpoint and other stuff. Like I've got to order boxes really soon, otherwise people are going to make orders
Mm.
towards the end of December, and I won't have a way to pack it, and I won't
Oh,
be
yeah.
able to get the boxes in time to be able to ship them out. And so like I've got to, there's so many things that it's like I got to look a couple of weeks ahead on some things, I got to look a couple of months ahead on other things, and
Wild.
it's a lot. It's so
Oh.
much.
It's a lot more than just like, hey, click on this link and you can get like a really cool glow stick that's better than a stick. Like it's there's a lot to it. So yeah, I appreciate everything you put into it, as well as like just the great marketing side. And yeah, I love watching as a Bense. Um,
Which, on that topic, after we
insane,
finish, and he's
insane.
requested that I send him some shorter blades. So I've got to, after we get off tonight,
I I
I'm
may
gonna cut some
have I
blades.
may have
And
instigated that.
I
I commented on on him doing stuff like, "You need to get Alan to send you some shorter blades," and I saw the little like on that. So sorry.
well, and when I no, and because I got to give it to him at the I was at a convention in Cincinnati a couple of months ago, and he's somewhere in Ohio. I can't remember where specifically, but it was like it wasn't that far away. I was going to be there, and I was like, hey man, come to the con. This will be really cool. He had other friends that were attending, and so it was like, it was a great weekend. Um, but and I was like, all right, so you can cut these, right? But that was right in the middle of a convention weekend, and like if you have a conversation, even like if you hang out with somebody for a little bit, and then you have a conversation that's less than 5 minutes, like the number of details from that conversation that you hold on to after the fact is like that's
Yeah.
like there were so many people that wanted his time that weekend, not just me. Like I can't even imagine like doing the whole being at a con and like being like kind
Right.
of roving around with different people, and then like in different groups and other stuff. Every convention I've been to as a creator, I have been in one spot, and people come buy and buy and buy and buy, and then eventually like somebody's like, oh hey, it's Master Allen. Oh hey, do you need a lightsaber? You want to touch one? Okay, all right. Oh, you bet this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's it's definitely. I've been starting to go to more cons. So I know what you mean with that. It's like there's so many things drawing you. So it's like
It's
a casino because there's so
it's
much going on. It's
it's
just like there's
so
flashing lights
like,
and there's this and there's that.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's wild.
very difficult to hold on to details.
Yeah, very much so. I can't wait to see what he does. Yeah, with a shorter blade because unwieldy to do something, and you still want like a full blade, so you need like a secondary blade to really like kind of shorten up to what he wants, right? So I'm looking forward to that content.
Well, hopefully we're
That's
going
gonna
to
be
be
great.
able to do a home and home at some point. My dojo is not tremendously well suited for Meteor Hammer, but like we'll find a park or something. Like like it's like ideally at some point we'll do a home and home where like I have him out. He does some stuff. I head to him. We do some lightsaber things and whatever because they're a martial arts
Awesome.
family. Like that's his um because his dad's an instructor and other stuff. So that's like they've got a really cool like a really cool space. I want to get to see it in person someday.
Nice. That's amazing. Um, I gotta. We like I said, we went through the questions of how do you got into Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. But since you've
Yeah,
been
I was
on,
just
it's about a
looking at
year
him and
ago.
thinking about it. Yeah, it has been. Um,
We've been asking some new questions. So the first one I want to ask, um, and we've been talking about lightsabers this long, and I haven't asked your favorite lightsaber color. What's your default? Like you'll see at most videos that I'm in, it's green or some variation of like a greenish blue sometimes with the pirate Jedi, give more of a sea kind of impression, but usually I'm
yeah.
green. What's your default?
So for filming, I do a lot of yellow
Hmm.
because the way it lights like the way it produces light for film because it doesn't like the colors that I'm generally wearing it doesn't distort any of them, and so I do yellow really often, and then the other one that I use most often is green, and so like the 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 two colors that I use the most, green and yellow. um the I really like doing yellow and purple. I also really like um um the green and yellow like together.
Hmm.
And so like um those are like the two combinations, and like I liked purple and yellow a lot more until there was a time where i I can't remember what I was doing with the video. I want to say it was a double Obiani with staffs.
Hmm.
And somebody was like, oh, Lakers colors, and then I was just like, man, he poisoned it for me. Ugh. Oh, it wounds me. um for anybody that
So
hasn't followed along with a lot of my content, and this is the Celtics are playing a very close game right now. I'm a lifelong Celtics fan, more or less. And so, as a lifelong Celtics fan, the Sixers and the Lakers, I have to have animosity towards them. It's not, and it does not extend to you. And so, if you are a Lakers fan, if you're a Sixers fan, if you're a Heat fan, I do not have animosity to you, and I don't actually have animosity to the people that are on the teams. It's just the laundry that I hate. Like
right,
that's the
that
you're
makes
right.
sense.
It's like that's
I get
all.
that.
Just
Yep, I get
just
that.
the outfits.
Yeah. The yellow green combination, I mean, fits with the Boston
It
Scally hat
works. It's
that you have. It
like
works for the whole thing. Um,
lights really
that's it's a
well.
good combination. Yeah, yeah. I find that's the problem I have, and I love doing blue green combos if I'm doing two, and sometimes just blue on its own. But I find depending on what I'm doing. The blue really looks weird on camera, and I think they found the same thing in the Obi-Wan
Red
Kenobi TV show. Like it doesn't film well.
red
Um,
and blue create this same kind of thing. I don't know if it's going to do it because I've got a really strong front light, but let's. Oh, that's pink. Hold on.
ooh,
Oops. All right. And so if
loving this.
I'm gonna do this. There we go. And so
Very good.
like I've done a couple of videos on this where like the environment helps inform
Yeah.
like what color the blade is, because if you just look at the blade it's so bright it looks mostly white, but as we get into blue, because of the way that digital cameras work, it makes the shadows look weird, and red
Yep.
does the same kind of thing. And then if you
Yep.
notice like now like my colors are getting distorted here. Hold on one second, I'm gonna mute this. It's so freaking loud. Oh,
Look how bright that thing is. If anyone's not watching the video, pause right now, go to the video, because he's in complete darkness and it was very well lit up. Look at this.
wait a minute, hold on, that's gonna give somebody a headache.
Oh, I thought we were getting the rainbow for a second. There we go.
1, 2, 3. That'll really give somebody a headache. Here we go. All right, and so this is like a
Yeah.
light blue, and so it doesn't
Yeah.
do the same. It won't do the same thing in terms of like making the shadows look weird, but it
Yeah.
distorts the colors. And then as we, come on, color change, get moving. There we go. Now it's going right. And
Yeah.
so like as you,
Look at yeah, super distorted right now.
and so then it makes the depth perception weird. And with a camera,
Yeah.
it's already 2D, and so your eyes already struggle with depth. And so then if you do something that makes it so that the shadows don't behave normally,
Hmm.
then like, but like your primary colors, and for light your primary colors are red, green, and blue, and so those are the three lights that show up the best in terms of filming.
Hmm.
Like, so anybody out there that's a creator, um if you're doing a lot of lightsaber content and you're having trouble, two things I strongly recommend. The first one is front light yourself, and then it helps people be able to tell what color your lightsaber is.
Hmm.
But also it'll make it so that you don't get like you don't lose as much information about you for the camera, because that flat
Yeah.
that flat aspect really messes with people. And now this thing is going to
I
be
was just
on
gonna
the
say this
site
is a
sometime
new hilt.
tomorrow. Yeah.
Holy!
Um,
Oh, I love that.
it's got a crystal on the bottom that matches the blade. It's a good
What?
one. Yeah, it's a really good one. It's like
Oh, I love that.
sort of stormtrooper esque.
Oh, yeah,
I'm a fan. It's a
yeah.
good one. It's a very good
That is really good. You always have great names. What's the name of this one?
one. I've talked to my friend Chris, the Star Wars lawyer, because one of the things that he wanted from the sequels that he did not get was Jedi fit, and that
Oh
there are a
yeah.
lot of people that when they see that design attribute it to Finn because like using like found stormtrooper parts to sort of
Hmm.
craft his saber. And so there are a lot of people that are like, oh, if Jedi Finn, if that was a thing, this would be his saber. Now I don't know that I necessarily agree, um, but I feel like I feel like he would have a little bit different vibe. But I'm creating a piece of content to toss it out to Chris, so that we get an opportunity to kind of go back and forth with it a little bit. It'll be on the site, but it may be unnamed, sort of
Okay.
depending on how that goes with him and like the
All right.
order that we get things released.
Gotcha. Gotcha. If you name it after Finn, man, I might need to start saving for that one because that's my son's name. We named him after the character.
Oh,
You might be
okay.
slightly killing me right now, just
I'm
with the Jedi
sorry.
Finn lightsaber. That's
Oh,
okay. It's a good complaint to have an
I
awesome
mean, like,
lightsaber for my
I
son.
can't be I can't be
Um,
sad if people are like, no, 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 I
that's
have to, I have to have
I
this
need it.
lightsaber
Yeah,
because of my kid.
terrible.
Yeah, all right, fair enough.
Uh, that leads me perfectly into my next question: is your
All right.
favorite overall lightsaber design? Mine, sadly, I haven't seen on any store ever, aside from some like 3D non-functional prints on Etsy, and that is a Gunji's saber. So
Oh,
if you
mm.
ever come across someone that's making wooden sabers, hit me up. What's your favorite overall?
All right, and so like my perception's distorted because um like I see it all in martial arts first and then like coolness factor second.
Yeah.
And most of the Jedi sabers and Sith sabers were built by people that hate hands. Um, just,
Correct. Yep.
just, just hate hands. The most classic saber designs, if you were going to fight like using it, like it might as well be a cheese grater. Um, I'm not a fan.
Yep. Yep. I was
um,
talking to someone at recently about um, oh man, was it Revan saber that's just
Revans
like
is
terrible.
Well, Revans is really because
Terrible.
it's shaped like a triangle, and so like
Yeah.
that's not a good shape for your hand. Round is not as good as oval, so that like for something to fit in your hand. But round is better than triangle.
Yeah.
Triangle is not good. And then like there are certain designs where um, so if you imagine a bowling pin, okay, and so you've got the end that normally sits on the ground is the fat end, and if you were going to pick it up, if you imagine like a juggler that juggles a bowling pin, right, and so you hold it by the neck, and so what you want from something that you are supposed to keep in your hand while you're fighting, you want it to be so that where your hand is, there's a stop if it slides down, and there's a stop if it slides forward. And so like that the Roman gladius where it's like there's enough space for a fist and there's like the bar on top and the bar on the bottom,
Hmm.
right? And so like those are the sorts of things that you need from a weapon that you're going to use with one hand. If you're going to have two hands, then it changes. Like it changes a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
like Cal Kestis's saber, using Cal Kestis's saber one handed is really difficult because
Mm.
it's really really heavy on the front side, and it basically from the front, all it does is taper, and so then it's basically it's like a ramp that your hand can slide off of, and the Revan saber has a lot of the same thing going on. So there's like a bunch of the sabers that it's just like it looks awesome. I love a bunch of the Cal Kestis saber designs. Like they're really cool. I can't fight with them the way that I want to fight with them, and so it's just like this looks awesome on a shelf. I'm happy having this on a shelf. Um, Qui Gon's is a great one. Qui Gon's is really
Mm.
good because it's even got like a surface that's flat. And so, like, not
Right.
only do you have good grip surface, you don't have control boxes. Like, you've got it's really easy to have a really dynamic grip with that one. It works one handed, it works two handed. That one's awesome. Um, I have this is convenient because it's sitting here. This is my last one of these. So, do you remember Star Wars Visions?
Yeah.
Do you remember Lop?
That's the yeah.
And so the it's like I don't know if it was supposed to be a rabbit or a dog or whatever.
I always thought
It's like
rabbit.
yeah, that
That's
was
yeah.
sort of my that was my impression. And then with a name like Lop, that is sort of reminiscent of Hop. That was my
Yeah.
that was my assumption.
And a
Um,
lop-eared rabbit is a
yeah,
thing. That's I used
that
to
was
have when I
my
was a kid.
that was my thought too. But there are some people that go puppy person first. But this is Lop Saber, and
Wow.
it's got like
Oh,
a really neat set
very
of
cool print.
details to it. And I actually have one of these left in the 250 mystery box things that I was talking about.
Cool.
This is it. But I love this one. Like this one's just so pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the first one that I fantasized about, like as a kid, was Luke's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now having owned Luke's, it's like I don't know, not unless I'm wearing gloves. If we're sparring and I'm wearing and we're both wearing like protective equipment and stuff like that, okay, cool. But
Yeah. Yeah. You got to know where that control box is. You got to wear gloves. It's yeah, pain.
is unforgiving, and the like it's basically just a stack of discs leading up to the hand, and it's just a whole bunch of
Yeah.
right angle metal, and like anywhere where you have right angle metal and your hand is coming in contact with right angle metal, it doesn't feel good. It's not. That's how you get cut.
Yeah. That's why even like you're and then this one is good, but I still wrapped it in leather on the bottom there. Because
And
that's it's
if you two hand grip that design, the bottom because it's flat is depending on how you two hand grip, it may not be very comfortable. And so like we'll use lap saber because it's handy. And so if you
oh,
are
that's
from a
cool.
school that you normally hook your pinky, because
Mm,
that's something that some do, this would be great if these things weren't on it.
right.
It would be fine. It would fit perfectly. Because what most sword styles have you do if you're going to two hand is you put the bottom of it in the center of your palm so that you're wrapping your
Mm,
fist around it. Because that's the bottom part of the lever, and then that's the top part of the lever, and that's how you control the blade. All right. And
cool.
so, like, this works okay. Luke Saber, not so much. Kenobi, because it's got like a grenade piece in the middle,
Yep.
also not so much. The Graflex is like probably the worst because in addition to the fact that there's not enough space above or below, it's also like this big around. Uh,
Yep. Very similar to the Disney sabers. Like mine's behind
yeah,
me. Those things are just massive.
and they're so
Like
heavy.
twice the circumference of this thing. It's like that's a two-handed broadsword
they're
and nothing
so
else. I don't
they're
spin
so
with that thing.
heavy.
I don't do a thing.
Yeah.
They're ridiculous. But I loved the experience. But like as far as doing anything with it, it's like
Mm.
that's a showpiece. Thank you. That's about it.
That was an
Um,
experience, and it is a physical reminder of an experience that I had that was amazing.
that's
Like
it. It was
that's the
interactive
yeah.
theater and a cool memento. Um,
Does
did
that
you
get us
have
to
a
does that segue to the merch question? I remember thinking about
You
that
know what?
when you gave me the
I
list.
think so. Yeah. Do you have a favorite bit of like a collectible, an item, something that you own that stands out?
So like I've been to the Galaxy's Edge all of one time,
Right.
right? Like, and so there's not a lot of like there's not a lot of merch I've accumulated. And like you get this as a dad too, right? Because it's like you get to a certain point, it's like, okay, my kids can have more fun because they can do this thing. Or I can get this thing that I want, and I kind of have to pick between these two. And then as a dad, it's just like you're never going to pick yourself.
No,
Just not.
no.
You're just never going to pick yourself. Because there's very few things that are so fun that you can enjoy them without thinking about what it could have been for them instead. And that like that is a reality of parenthood that's very difficult to describe. But it's like there's certain things that it's just like, man, this could have been this for them. They could have done this. I'm
Yeah.
doing this, and this is really cool. But like half of me is thinking about what it could have been instead, right? But so when we went to Galaxy's Edge, I did the droid build, and
Right.
that was so cool.
Yeah.
And so I have my little purple BB unit. The kids got to help me put it together, and so they got to have all these moments. I remember I got to post that earlier this year. I want to say it was in like February. Um, but like there's again like the interactive theater because there's the like they activate it and they pair it to your thing and it comes alive in front of you as you help put
So
it
cool.
together, and there's these and there's different voice chips to try out. um as a
Yeah.
I got to make it a business expense to buy voice chips. um it's like, like, oh,
Perfectly
company's going to pay
acceptable.
for
Yeah.
this is justified. Excuse me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Right. And so like that's like there are very few things that I have Star Wars collectible wise that are things that like I had like a really cool connection to the physical object.
Right.
That is one of them. The other one I don't have with me because it's at the dojo, but this is so. Have you been reading any of the High Republic stories?
A bit. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I became mutuals with Daniel Jose Older, who is if you are listening to this and you're a Star Wars fan and you're not familiar with Daniel Jose Older, he is very active on all social media. He's one of the story group people for the High Republic stories. He's a marvelous author, um, and his wife is a marvelous author in her own right as well. Like they're just fantastic people, and they're very active on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and et cetera, et cetera. Right. But so I became mutuals with him early-ish on in the pandemic, and I got to read some of the IDW High Republic Adventures comics,
Cool.
like as a part of that. Well, so there was a bit that became very popular among fans, which was there's a Jedi named Torben Buck who, when he goes into conflict, shouts buckets of blood. Um, and this is based on a real life human being that DJO knows that because he was an EMT. And so there was somebody that English was not their first language, and they were on the radio saying buckets of blood because it was blood to put into people to make
Mm,
them better because they were hurt or
right.
injured or whatever, right? So this was a healer's war cry, was the buckets of blood. And so then he imported that onto this Jedi. Um,
Love it.
uh, but Yoda apparently dazzles him with some baked goods, which look basically like, like brownies. Um, and this leads to a comic issue. It was a special edition that was a bake-off. And so Buckets
I
of
need to
Blood
go read that.
uses um, Master Yoda's recipe in this bake-off, not against Master Yoda, against somebody else. And I have a signed copy, and it is, I.
Nice.
It's just like that's one of my things. It's like I have a signed copy of that, and it's just like there's such a cool story about this comic book. It doesn't make any sense if you don't like Star Wars, but I have one, and it's autographed.
That's amazing.
It's
We did that live on Instagram when people are listening to
yesterday,
this a
yeah.
couple of days ago. And we talked about how ridiculous Star Wars can be and also how serious. And it's so funny that something like Buckets of Blood and a Bake Off can be in the same universe as Andor. And that delights me
And like
completely.
and it fits, right? Like if you look at like if you look at the globe, there is countless atrocity taking place as we speak, but there's also like small human things. Like there's
Hmm.
silly things and there's tragic things, and like because that's life, right? Like that was the um, I feel like people talk about that with Shakespeare and some other stuff, but that's
Mm.
like that's one of the things about Star Wars. Like it's yeah, I'm still waiting for hugs. Is this like or
Yeah.
like every time, whenever people complain about Star Wars being ridiculous, I am always reminded of A New Hope with Han Solo. We're fine. We're all fine here now. How are
The
you?
whole thing's ridiculous. Yeah, it's
It's
it's just
like
it's
fine.
it's never
We're
meant to
all
be
fine
like
here
high cinema
now.
or anything. It's
Yeah.
and that can fit, but also it can be very ridiculous, and I love it when it's ridiculous. Um, I want to move on to something new
Yeah.
in this. Speaking of ridiculous and how Star Wars is now and how it can be going, Dave Filoni has a new role in Star Wars. He is the chief creative officer at Lucasfilm officially now. I want to get your opinions on this. How do you feel about Filoni stepping into a bigger role? We talked a little bit before we started recording about, does this change anything? And I had read an interview or something where he basically said, it seems like it's the same kind of stuff, but he basically alluded to the fact that he's involved earlier now in all of the projects, or at least most, but it sounds like all of the projects. Like before, he was involved in the stuff that he made, so Ahsoka and Mando and that kind of stuff. But now, and could sometimes be called in to be like, "Hey, does this work? Hey, does that work? Can you stop by for a day and see how we're doing?" But the stories are already developed too far that he, can't really come in and mess things up. Now it seems like he has that power very, very, very early on to come in and mess things up.
Yeah, and I'm
How do you
wondering
feel
if
about that?
I mean like it's so especially when it comes to like making TV shows, making movies, like all of these things, right? Like um, are you Douglas Adams fan? All right,
No.
so Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was a wildly popular novel. Douglas Adams is the author.
Oh yes,
Um,
I love the movie. I've never read the book.
okay, and so the movie came many, many years after he died, and but like the rights were eons before that. Like they were trying to make that movie for a very long time, and then it changed directors, it changed like different studios bought the rights, different writers, different talent got associated with it, all kinds of stuff, right? And so one of the quotes that Douglas Adams had that has lingered with me since is that making a movie is like trying to cook a steak by having a long series of people step into the room and breathe on it once.
Sounds delightful.
But it's like, so it's like there's projects that like every now and then something will happen fast from a production company. Like something will
Hmm.
have like a certain zeitgeist, and so it will happen fast. But in general, things happen very, very slow, and there's a lot of like somebody gets put in a certain position, but then like some other stuff can't get lined up, and so then that person then has to go to another project because they had another commitment, or they get an offer that is better than sitting on their hands because a director can't get paid if they're not making a movie.
Mm.
um, and so like the whatever his creative position means, like whatever that's going to mean logistically in terms of like um, uh, how projects get made, how projects get chosen to be made, and things like that. Like I don't know how much it's going to change the speed with which things can happen. If we think back through the last, the 4 years of like the rise of Disney Plus and like all the stuff that's planned versus what ultimately happens. Like the Rogue
Vast
Squadron
difference.
movie and other things. It's like but that's also like that's television production, that's movie production, and so that wasn't.
Hmm.
I don't know what word to use there. It's like that wasn't all that shocking. It was a little bit disappointing. I was looking forward to Rogue Squadron,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so like I don't I don't know how much of a difference this makes for me. People that didn't like the sequels are excited about Filoni having more involvement because their like he is connected to so much of their nostalgia for Star Wars.
Mm, yeah.
Um, but it's like as a storyteller, there's things he does that I really love. There's things that he does pretty consistently that I'm like, it's okay. And that's because that's creative people. Like that's how it's going to be. Like,
Right.
pick a director. I really really love Ryan Johnson. And in Star Wars circles, that is occasionally a hot take. Um,
Yeah. Yep. Can
but
be for sure.
I have loved basically every movie that man has made. I've been with him since Brick, which if you haven't seen is amazing. It's a noir detective thriller set in a high school. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is the lead. It's a really really good movie.
Nice.
There are people whose criticisms of Ryan Johnson are separate from the he killed Star Wars, The Last Jedi did this. Like, like if you didn't like The Last Jedi, you don't have to like The Last Jedi. I'm not going to argue with about it, but like that's not Ryan Johnson didn't pick what outline he had for the movie. He was given an outline from the story group, which like
Mm,
Dave Filoni is now like and was a key person on, um, and wrote the script to match the outline that was expected. Um, but like he doesn't have a strong history of having a lot of people of color in his films. He's had a lot of movies with a lot of white actors. And so there are some people that it's like, hey, I like Ryan Johnson, but this is a pattern within his movies, and most of the time in his movies he is the writer and the director. And
mm,
so this is a like this is something that I am not going to accuse him of whatever, but that raises a red flag for me, and it makes it so that I have trepidation about being all in on that person.
yeah.
And I hadn't that was a point of view that I haven't ever lived, because like I'm a standard issue doughy bearded white guy. And so hearing that on TikTok, when there was somebody that was, talking about, hey, look, I love The Last Jedi. There's all this stuff I love about it. But here are a couple of things that rub me the wrong way about that movie. And here are a couple of things about Ryan Johnson that make me very, very hesitant to go to the mattresses for him. And I was just like, man,
Yeah.
that's that's a really good point, and I got this opportunity to get this information from this person, and I don't automatically feel like I need to argue with them about their world experience. I just got to learn from it, and then it makes me go back and rewatch these movies that I still love, but I see them in a different light. There
Mm,
are many people of color that their objection to The Last Jedi is how much Finn's role is diminished from The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi.
yeah. Very much so.
It's
Yeah.
significant. And so, this is a long way of saying like, I don't, I don't know that my interaction with Star Wars is going to be changed that much with Filoni getting a promotion. Good for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have functionally been with him since Avatar: The Last Airbender. Um, Unpopular take: I liked the show better after he left. Um,
Fair.
like
Right.
that's I liked it better after he left. Um, but but that's like the things I love about Star Wars. I don't anticipate that they're going to change, like based on
Yeah.
what his position and responsibilities are and stuff. And so that's like for me, like that's that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. For me, it's it, love him or hate him doesn't really matter. To me,
he's not going anywhere, certainly.
it's there's someone in the lead that at least loves Star Wars, and you can't deny that he at least
Oh, definitely.
lives, eat,
Yeah.
and breathes Star Wars. Learned as much as he could from George Lucas. Directly loves telling people about Star Wars. You watch anything from Freddie Prinze Jr. and he's like, Dave Filoni learned this from George
I love
Lucas, and he
that Freddie
taught me,
Prinze
and this is
Jr.
right.
I love that
Awesome
interview
clips if you
so
get like,
much.
but like so like Filoni is, whether you like his style, like him, whatever. At least he's someone that is now seemingly in a more leadership position, more at the wheel kind of thing, and can direct Star Wars in a certain cohesive direction. And he's a good story guy of like bringing back this little piece, or bringing back like, hey, George had this idea long ago. I'm going to pick that and put it in here. Hey, what about these Mortis gods? This was a weird arc, but I'm going to make it serious and make it cool. And I'm going to tie some things in, and I'm going to plant seeds like 15 years ago that now we're going to start to see. Like, he's that guy, and giving that guy more power and more creative control to make a cohesive universe, I think is, and again, love the sequels or hate them, they probably could have used a little bit more cohesion as far as like where characters are. And you just mentioned, Finn
Well,
being
and
kind of sidelined and stuff like,
but so some of that is, and this is a for anybody that isn't familiar, because like, so a lot of people point to, oh well, J.J. Abrams, he directed he directed the bookend ones, and then Ryan Johnson was in the middle, and JJ
mm,
did all of this stuff in response to the backlash to this and da 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 da. So originally, Trevorrow was supposed to be the writer
mm,
and director for Episode 9, um, and then he produced a movie that flopped hard, like it
yep,
flopped hard, and so then like the one of the things that you'll see with like different creative projects and things like that, like if somebody says creative differences, right? And so if somebody says, oh no, we parted on creative differences, what that means is, so like a producer's job, so like Kathleen Kennedy, is getting it paid for. It's like they are the person that is writing the checks, and they are securing funding, and they are writing the checks. That's their job. Their job isn't, story, isn't, whatever. Now it's possible that like a producer will be like, all right, so we have this money, and that is connected to, we have this star. If we lose this
right,
star, we lose this money. Because people are more likely, like financial backers for movies are more likely to back a movie that has established talent, because it's more likely to be a success. Like that kind of, like, that's the game. That's what producers
makes
do.
sense.
Okay. If somebody leaves a project because of creative differences, that means that somebody basically on that level said to that person something to the effect of, this movie will not get funded while you're connected to it.
Yeah,
And that might be because that person screwed up, like the Benioff and Weiss D&D. They were supposed to get a bunch of Star Wars stuff, but then when season 8 of Game of Thrones flopped, like,
yeah,
Disney got distance from them incredibly quickly. It took like a year
so
before they
quick.
formally announced it. But like they were originally scheduled to be at Comic-Con to talk about it and a bunch of other stuff, but then that got canceled. And as soon as that got canceled, it was just like, oh,
Yeah, yeah, that's gone. We just don't know about it yet,
it's over.
but we know
And
about it.
and
Yeah,
so like Taika Waititi and Ryan Johnson talking about like scheduling conflicts and things like that. Like that could be because like Ryan Johnson has the Glass Onion, um,
Knives
like all
Out
the
stuff.
success of those
It's
movies, like he's under
yeah,
contract for stuff, and so that could be a part of it. Because if Disney wants him to make movies, they need to be able to. That was one of the
with
things they ran into
Netflix
with the
or
Marvel
whoever's
movies.
working with now. Yeah,
Whoever it
yeah,
is that's making, because it's like whatever production house is making them and then selling it to,
yeah,
and then Netflix gets to say it's theirs, even if they like bought it from the BBC or whatever. Like they've been doing that for years. Or there's a bunch of Canadian television shows that were hits in Canada that are in the U.S. because Netflix buys the rights from,
oh yeah,
like, and that's like, because it's like, oh, this was a hit here, it's probably going to be a hit here too. What is it with Shorzy and,
oh, Letterkenny.
yeah, like,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that's incredibly popular online with Americans thanks to Netflix.
yeah.
But that's so like, Ryan Johnson might get to make his trilogy. I really hope so, because I believe in him as a writer and director, but he might not.
Mhm.
Um, the One of the things to me that made the Kenobi show really amazing is they had a writer's room with a lot of different people and personalities in it. There
Yeah,
are other writers' rooms that Star Wars has done that it's not a lot of different points of view. Like there was one that the writers' room was basically Filoni and Favreau, and
yep.
that's like, I like both of them as storytellers. I like them as directors. I feel like they're probably awesome human beings and stuff like that. But there's a whole lot of point of view you don't get in Star Wars, kind of for everybody. So
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So it's yeah, and I like that. So this role, hopefully he'll be able to do things top down, but also get that more diverse writers room because he's not as hands on with all the projects, maybe. So
If he's gonna have to
we'll
be in
see.
that many different places, like they're not gonna be able to
Yeah.
get away with having him be the principal writer for everything. Like this
Right.
is not.
Right. So hopefully good things will come from that. We'll see. But one of the things that he's talked about, and we've gone for a little while of
Yeah.
teasing people that we're going to talk about some stuff. So let's get into
Let's
it.
dive into Ahsoka.
And that is Ahsoka's what are we calling this? Like lightsaber choreography, I guess is the best way to
Yeah,
describe what we're going to be
the
talking about, or fight
yeah
scenes.
the fight scenes. It's like it's all
Fight
the
scenes. All right.
because they were all flavored really differently.
Very much so.
Like
Very
every
much so.
single one, they were all
So first off, like this show started off with a I'll say a spin on a familiar lightsaber style. We saw
mhm,
some artwork teased in the lead up to this, and it was like, are those lightsabers orange or are they red? And this is a weird filter. Turns out they were orange. Turns out that Balin was using a great lightsaber that hadn't been seen for like 500 years. Although I'd say, what's his name, the dickhead
yeah.
from Clone Wars used a great saber, or like four of them.
Not
Um,
Ponkrell because he it
Ponkrell.
was
What
the
was he?
Ponkrell was a he used two staffs, and so
Two
instead of
staffs,
being
but they had to be
Grievous, it was
great staffs, right? Like they were bigger, I would imagine. Either way, they're saying first in 500 years to use a great lightsaber, which is more heavier, more powerful. And then Shin was actually using a light foil, which is, I guess, lighter, a little bit more maneuverable. So we saw some, like, they're saying it's new lightsaber stuff, and I don't know how canon this is or if it's just like, yeah, people are saying
oh,
whatever.
whatever.
But either way, we did see this show started off with these two coming out. Unusual color unless you pre-ordered Jedi Fallen Order and got the orange saber, but like orange orange is a weird one, and it
Well, it's
kind of
like
led off to this show being very different. And then we saw Balin Skull just do his little, straight off like his hallway scene with this orange saber and just being a goddamn tank with a lightsaber
well,
or a
and
great saber, whatever you want to call it.
and there's certain things within canon that it's just like, oh crap, we have to figure out, right? So the entirety of the prequel movies were done before the animated like Clone Wars started, right? And so then every single season of Clone Wars, they needed Grievous to be a key bad guy because he just pops up in the movies without any kind of explanation, like just right. And so like he's got to be a key bad guy, but he needs to never actually meet Anakin. And
Yeah,
so like
incredible.
it's really really difficult to have your principal protagonist and like your key antagonist never get to meet in your show, but that was what you're handcuffed with, right? And
Because of
so
one stupid line. That's my favorite part. It's the you're shorter
you're
or
shorter
whatever it
than I
was that
thought
it
you
was
were going to
shorter than I
be.
imagined.
Yeah.
Like that one line wrecked the whole thing for everything. Like because obviously he had never seen him if he's making fun of his height.
and then
Proceed with
and then
7 seasons of a show.
yeah and
Jesus
then
Christ.
like and now and this leads to one of my own, like this is sort of a call it frustration, whatever, right? With the sort of with the prequel era. And so Return of the Jedi, Leia gets one line where she talks about her real mother and describes her. But Lucas, in order to maintain the homages and the symbolism that he was trying to, he needed to kill Padme. And so it was just like, nope,
Yeah.
fuck it. Right. And
Yeah.
that's and
Yeah.
it's a um I've got a handful of friends that like, because like in the Kenobi show, we got zero like Padme's name has not been said in any of the live action stuff, but Anakin has now had a couple of cameos, and a few other things
Yeah.
like it's it's time. Like we should be getting some Padme references directly, you know.
Hmm.
Um, but but like that same thing where it's like that one line should have meant, but then it was just like nah, this is I like the story
Yeah.
better if I
Yeah.
ignore that, and
Right.
then and then
Yeah.
and
They'll pick and
so
choose. Everyone's yeah.
and so like the backflips they went through to make sure that Grievous and Anakin never encountered each other were like, it was impressive because it got really really close a
Yeah.
couple times. Like,
Yeah. And
um,
it could have easily been like they could have met each other and just have it because like Grievous is a cyborg. You could have had in the cartoon Anakin chop his legs off and he gets new legs that are a little bit shorter, and that's
yeah,
Anakin's
something.
sly little way of just being like, hey, remember last time I cut your legs off? You know, like that could have been his little like
Totally would
dig,
work.
and you watch
Yeah,
it afterwards and it's
and it
just
would have
like,
been in
oh
character for
man,
Anakin.
what a sassy little drama queen, you know, like that's Anakin. Is the same guy that made Vader's cape float or rode a
Yeah.
TIE fighter down on top of like he's dramatic. He's drama personified. So that line easily could,
Right.
but
It just
they danced
and
around it
so
for 7 seasons.
and so like in with the dark orange lightsaber or light red or however you want to think about it, whatever. Um, it's even in the Clone Wars, like the blues are different blues, the greens are different greens. It's like your lightsaber blade color is like your thumbprint,
Yeah.
and your sound, it's like it's the same kind of thing. And I like Star Wars better that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that all stems from like having to fix a problem that they encountered in Return of the Jedi with special effects. It's like, oh crap, blue doesn't show up. We're in the desert. The sky is
Yeah.
too blue. It's too bright. We can't make the lightsaber show up. No, make it green. Well, but Mr. Lucas
Yeah.
is supposed to be blue. Make it green.
Yeah.
And so, like, does does dark orange mean that they're not Sith? Does it mean that they're this or they're broken Jedi or that? It's just like, oh my god.
Do you ever see that meme of lightsaber lore? If Samuel L. Jackson never asked for purple, and it's this book, and it's the other books like this because he did ask for purple. That's essentially it. It's the sky and Sam Jackson, and now we have. I have a book of lightsabers
We
in my
had it,
living room just behind me there, and
and we had
it
it
talks about all this
before.
shit.
Like the whole like the consular sentinel thing was born out of the original trilogy. Like that was all like that was all things that like writers were like, okay, I'm gonna explain this.
Yeah,
And then
it's
everybody
incredible.
else had to more or less like, oh, okay, all right, we'll go with that. That's fine. Consular and sentinel. Yeah, sure. All right.
Yeah.
That and and so like the different ways that Ezra's been referenced, like the broken Jedi thing, and the um like what is Balin, what is Shin Hati, like what's the title for
Mhm.
them, what's the word, because the Sith are gone, and that's why Kylo Ren had to be on his own with the Knights of Ren and all of this, like
Right.
and then the original Ren was a dark side user, which those comics are really really good to dive into, like
Hmm.
when Ben Solo was Ben Solo and who the Knights
Yeah.
of Ren were, and Luke and Ben, and going after them, like they're really good stories. It's really interesting. um it's really really hard to treat Star Wars like it's an accounting of a history. It's like just because of the nature of, like, go ahead.
Which is why I love this show having Hu Yang say the opening crawl, because now every single thing in Star Wars from like in my little head canon is just Hu Yang telling stories, and sometimes he flourishes a little too much, and sometimes he gets some details wrong because he's 25 freaking thousand years old, which is ridiculous as well. But
Right,
like
yeah.
that's the kind of shit that it's like, oh, okay, so this doesn't line up with this. Yeah, Hu Yang's circuits got crossed that day. Don't worry
Well,
about it.
and a bunch of people have hypothesized before about how the opening crawls for the OT and the prequel trilogy are R2,
Right.
because
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
one of the
So
only
now it's
characters
just
that's
it's
been present
moved.
for, yeah. And it's like, all right, yeah, 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 all right, cool. And
Yeah.
then it's one of the reasons why I like the going from extended universe to Legends. Like I feel like that
Mm.
frees people more to be creative, because it's like, well, it's like I don't know how old your littles are, but like at some point every kid is going to have like their Greek myths phase.
Yeah.
right? And it's like, and there's
Mine's
so
3,
many.
so he's more in the Paw Patrol phase than
Well,
Greek myth,
yeah,
but it's gonna happen.
I really, it's
Yeah.
like everybody gets there eventually, and like they're all. It's like, well, in this version of the story, this is what happened, but in this version of the story,
Well, that's it. I got to meet Timothy Zahn. I got my copy of Heir of the Empire
I've heard he's a
signed and
really
had a chat with
cool
him.
human.
He is a really, really cool guy and so chill. And was talking about ways to make, especially his canon stuff, still work, but also just like a ton of like he even went so far as to say like, who's to say that Ben was the first kid for like Han and Leia. Like you can kind of fudge some timeline, have the twins die. Might not fit perfectly into everything in canon, but like you could still have some things, especially like Heir of the Empire, just very quickly work for the most part.
They don't
Like
require, and Heir to the Empire was so good. I really hope we don't get Luke.
yeah,
I'd be 100% honest there. I really hope we don't get Luke. Um, for everybody
yeah.
that hasn't read Heir to the Empire, I won't spoil that. But
Yeah.
like
I
Heir
think
to
I
the
talked about
Empire
that on the show before.
plugs in well. Like you got to
Yeah.
tweak it. There's not a way to take
Yeah.
anything from like the writ. Like converting novel to screen is really hard. Because
Yeah.
the mediums are so different. Because you go from like having a narrator, not having a narrator, and having to like
Yeah.
you know
Internal
like
dialogue. It just
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
especially for
Truly.
characters like Thrawn, where like having Thrawn be the point of view character for a novel is like
Yeah.
it's really really difficult to translate that to screen because
Mhm.
otherwise you're just going to have a whole lot of and voices.
Yeah.
Like,
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Very uninteresting, but a really cool read. But
I mean,
yeah,
if
very
Morgan Freeman is the
uninteresting
voice of Thrawn, I'm
visually.
in. But
Ooh, there we go.
or Anthony
I
Hopkins,
like it.
either way, like I'm in. If it's one of those two, I'm in. If they are the voice of Thrawn, it can be this and internal monologue voiceover. I'll do it. Sure, no
I'd,
problem.
I'd watch it. Yeah, I'd watch several seasons of that show or several hours of that movie. Um,
Can't do James Earl
Incredible.
Jones, but you know.
I love. Yeah, yeah, um, yeah, yeah. There's and so I love watching Star Wars as like trying to think of Star Wars as like someone coming in and just being like, I've seen the movies, maybe haven't seen all of the movies. I see this. Why is that lightsaber orange? I don't care. And then we talk about it like this for an hour, and it's just fantastic. Um, as a martial arts instructor, I did want to talk about a couple of things that
Oh
came
yeah,
up
yeah.
in this. Uh, like dealt a lot more with forms. Again, we saw Balin use kind of a modified form 5 is kind of what I've been reading. I thought it looked kind of more like a new form because he looked more like a knight with a broadsword, but people are saying like, it's modified of what Vader was using and whatever. Um,
So like the anybody that becomes a great fighter, they don't fight like a style; they fight like themselves.
right.
That's like that's like from jump, right? That's one. Um, Bruce Lee is relatively famous outside of the martial arts community for inventing the martial art. And Jeet Kune Do, the martial art that he invented, he studied a whole bunch of stuff and then he combined it together, like knitting a scarf and said, all right, this is my system. I did all this stuff and this is
Yeah.
what I'm going to teach based on how I learn and what I've experienced and all that kind of stuff. Basically, every martial art throughout the history of time was built that way. Like every form was made up by somebody.
Right.
It was a person, right? And now in China, during a certain section of the history of martial arts, if you did that and you took credit, then you were considered arrogant. It was rude. It's faux pas, right? And so your martial art has to have an origin story. You got to have a legend.
Mm.
And so that's why there's all the like, oh no, I was on this mountain and I found the forgotten temple of the 9 falling stinging bees fist. And I was there for 10 years, except it was only 3 months our time. Like, and it's like that kind of stuff. And that's why, because
Yeah.
you couldn't just study from a bunch of people, take the
Hmm.
lessons, internalize them, combine the lessons together, like integrate it into a system, and then start
Mm.
teaching it and say, I made this. Because that made you
Right.
an asshole. And
Right.
so, like, whatever the like I don't like getting bound by the forms. A lot of people get like they want it to be really rigid, and there aren't very
Hmm.
many martial artists that are worth the piss that like get rigid. You get more and more like jazz the better you get.
Yeah.
Because it's not like the improv is difficult to describe outside of like people that are athletes or um, jazz musicians, because it's not like a classical work where you have a pattern that you are studying that you are trying to repeat as perfectly as possible, and frequently coming just short of that. It's
Hmm.
you are in the moment and needing to create on the fly out of what's inside you. And
Right.
so like in sports, athletes and teams spend a whole lot of time practicing plays, and it's a play is designed to create certain things to happen based on what you think the defense is going to do so that you can get a good offensive possession. And so like whatever the sport is, it doesn't matter if it's basketball, hockey, soccer, football, whatever, you're trying to get the sport object into an open space at the same time as a member of your team. And so like in hockey, it's you want to get an open space where the puck and the player get there at the same time so that the player can tee it up and you hope you get a lucky bounce. In soccer, it's the exact same thing, just people don't
Yep.
have knives on their feet. Um, like, and it's
Yeah.
but it's like that's how you
They
generate.
shouldn't have knives on their feet. Soccer could be more interesting with that.
I feel like it would be really hard to run fast. Like you'd get a
I
lot more
guess.
ankle injuries because like your foot would go in and then you'd be like, "Ugh," and then
Yeah.
um.
Fine. Fine. Whatever.
And, I mean, plus there was a dude and there's a guy that there was a hockey player that passed away. In
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Not the
and that
best.
was
Yeah.
yeah, like that would happen
Yeah.
so much
Tragic.
more often in soccer. Um,
Yeah.
I should not have made light of that. That was not
Mm.
not a good look. Um,
So I was playing Rocket League earlier. That's another sport that you try to get a thing into the
see,
thing with
it's
the
like
stuff, but it's the same
object,
principle.
object, teammate, open space, same time. And so your
Yep.
offense, the best offenses in any sport, it's something that happens intuitively between teammates about being able to look at what the defense is doing, and then you modify on the fly to make that goal happen, which is object, person, empty space at the same time.
Yeah.
Because then there's nothing that the defense can do because they're out of position to do anything, and then something good happens. That's how fights work. It's intuitive. You do it in like it's called chunking. Like it's it's you're operating by feel rather than by analysis, because analysis is too slow.
Yeah. You get in your
Uh,
head during a fight, you're going to lose.
get your face kicked in.
Yeah.
That's every athlete that has ever been described as not caught up to the speed of the game. That means they're thinking the game, they're not feeling the game.
Yep.
And so, like the all the forms analysis, I usually don't participate in because they say a bunch of things that are unkind regarding the forms, and I don't want to poison that for people.
Yeah.
But I'm not fond. Like Balin had a really really defined style. Shin Hati had a very very defined style. Sabine had a very defined style. Ahsoka fought a little bit different every time she fought, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, 'Cause broadly speaking, like she was the. I realize that not everybody's going to agree with this. She was the best combatant in
Yeah.
out of everybody. She lost because there were a
Yep.
whole bunch of times where she was fighting herself instead of fighting them. But like she was the best combatant.
Yep.
Um, right? And like one of the reasons why Balin beat Ahsoka in that really, really cool open space fight with all this stuff going on, right? Like part of the reason why Balin won is because Balin had very, very good clarity of purpose. And Ahsoka was, if you've ever seen the movie Last Samurai with Tom Cruise, Too Many Mind. Like it was that,
Yep.
like it was,
Yep.
she wasn't right with herself. So then it came out in her fight.
And she lost it as soon as Sabine walked in. Or actually, as soon as Shin walked in, and she kind of got distracted by that at first, and started to lose, and then Sabine kind of came back, but it was like that's an even more disturb. But she was up in her head. She lost that fight right there, and it was really interesting to see Balin switch in that fight. I'm just going to jump right into that fight
Oh
because it's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
amazing.
Let's do it. It's a
Uh,
great one.
so
I think it's my
so
second favorite.
Balin switched during that fight, because at first he was fighting that as a defensive thing, trying to protect the orb. He didn't care about winning. And he even said straight up to Ahsoka, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to fight you. I don't want to kill you. We don't have to do this. Just let the orb do its thing. And I'm going to stand in the corner and just watch. Like, I don't care. So the whole time he's doing defensive, he's just trying to play keep
It's
away,
stalling. Yeah.
just
That's
stay
prevent
away.
defense.
That's it. And then he switches when he gets kicked, and she gets really, really close to the orb. And you see him go for those haymaker style, just like big hammer swings that look like if he hits her one more time with one of those blows, she's going to
Something's
like
gonna
just
buckle.
shatter
Yeah.
every bone in her body. You know,
And
like it
that's
was
like
just
the act two of the
incredible.
fight is
Yeah.
where like we really, really see like so like act one has a certain like a delay, a stall kind of a fight. Act two of that same fight is, like that turning point where Balin has to fight differently because the way he was fighting, like she was eventually going to accomplish destroying the orb. She didn't need to
Yep.
live, she needed to destroy the orb. And she was
Yep.
fighting that way. And so then he had to switch. Well, then as he pushes that to the advantage, then we get to act three, which you just brought up, which is where Shin Hati shows up. Oh crap, Sabine's dead. It's my fault.
Yep.
You know? And
Yep.
then Sabine shows up, Sabine's alive. Oh no.
Yep.
That's my fault too.
Oh, good. She's alive. Ah, I'm off a cliff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Incredible. Incredible. And I love his, was it that was unwise? Again, every single thing that man did was just so friggin' intimidating. Like,
And he doesn't think he's wrong.
damn.
That is the
No.
scariest
Oh,
freaking
he is
villain.
not wrong.
Is
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
person that is just like, no, this is like I've made my peace with this. It's like, and there's not like remorse. It's like with Saw, like Saw Gerrera, where it's just like, no, 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 ends justify the means. I'm there, I'm in. None of what I am doing is morally wrong because it
Yeah.
is a moral obligation. Like Balin is there too. And so like all
Yeah.
of the morally gray stuff that we are experiencing as an audience member, that character is just like, nope, no, I'm in the right and I've made my peace with
Yeah.
that. And if somebody wants to have an opinion about it, I will let them know what their opinion needs to be at the time that I need to hear it.
Yeah. The best kind of villain is the one that not only thinks they're right, but like
That,
knows that they're
that
right
thinks
in
they're the
every
hero.
single fiber. Like, oh, you think I'm wrong? Well, you're wrong, but like I can listen to you for a second, but I already know that you're wrong. And here's my giant knight in shining armor style lightsaber to back me up. Like it's just
It's
badass personified.
an inevitability to
Yeah.
his, like the way he fights. There's a, like, he's not going to get tired first. Like
Yeah.
like certain things of like watching him, those were things. It's just like, oh man, because if the other person
Yeah.
gets tired first, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're faster than you, if they get tired before you.
Yeah. And you, like I said, like people were saying like he's similar to Vader, and I get that. I get that. But like when I was
So much more
watching it, it was
mobility.
like this guy, yeah,
So much
he's
more mobility.
imposing like Vader. He's big, but holy shit, he can move. Like he's throwing in some spins, he's throwing in some stuff, and then he's hitting like a goddamn jackhammer at the same time. It's just like it's to me, it was something we hadn't really seen before. You get
We
the
haven't
slow
had
robotic Vader.
we haven't had a
Eh,
methodical villain in a fight.
yeah,
We've had the Darth Mauls, which are super acrobatic. Well, to a certain extent, I think we could say that Dooku is methodical. But so like
mm,
we've had Darth Maul, which is like an agility fighter. We had Dooku, who was finesse, right? And
yeah,
so
yeah.
there was an
Good way to put it.
inevitability to his fighting style, right?
Yeah,
Um, Vader is the hammer and the anvil. Like, but the limitation of Vader's costume. So in the
yeah,
costume, he can't lift his hand above his face. And so one of the reasons why Vader fights one-handed is because the costume doesn't allow him to fight two-handed, without basically just his hands having to be stuck.
yeah,
It's like if he's got both hands on it, then he can rotate his waist, but he can't move from the shoulder. He can move from his elbows. And so, like from a choreography design standpoint, it's really, really limiting. Now they typically do a really, really good job with making him feel, um, just like just like a weight on a sheet. They describe gravity in space where it's just like
Hmm.
just distorts the space around it. Like they do a really good job of making it feel like that. But then when you break down his choreography, Vader's choreography is always really boring because the guy in the suit can't move and he can't see. Balin's goal was not bound by any of that stuff. And so like they
Yeah.
were able to take the same thing where they had this character that was heavy, and
Yeah.
could do so much more with that. And so I loved watching him fight. Um,
Yeah.
Loved watching him fight. Um,
Yeah.
was that your favorite fight in the
Any
show?
See, I kind of go back and forth. I think that's probably my favorite, like lightsaber to lightsaber fight.
Uh,
I'm gonna give it to that one. I think my favorite entertaining fight was probably the trio versus the first set of zombie troopers before they became zombie troopers.
right,
When
right.
you had the three, the three amigos, and they're all started off all with lightsabers, which was awesome. And then Ahsoka says Sabine blasters, and she instantly and just kind of intuitively goes in between and behind the two people with lightsabers. So they're her shields, and she's just picking off,
That
and
action sequence was so cool, and it was like, and that was
so
the
great.
moment where it was just like, oh, this is how
Yeah,
Sabine and Ahsoka work. Like this is
yeah,
when they're
yeah,
not at each other, when they're not at themselves, because their conflict at each other is a result of their conflict within themselves. Like the thing that the characters have to work on is the reason why they butt heads, as
yeah,
opposed to the opposite, right? Like, and it's just like, this is it. This is why it works.
yeah, yeah.
And I love
And
fight scenes that
throwing,
have those. Like,
yeah, yeah, that deeper meaning, and then throwing Ezra into the mix, and it's you see that kind of like bestie connection between he and Sabine because she's taking people out and he sees that opening. And even before Ahsoka goes into attack mode, because up until that point they're kind of in defense mode, even before she does, he's just like, cool, Sabine just opened that up for me. I'm in. And he
boom,
just
boom,
goes
boom.
in
Yeah,
swinging.
the way they moved the pieces on the board was
Yeah.
really cool for that sequence.
Yeah.
Um,
And the finisher of him grabbing the two troopers into Ahsoka. Look at her face. Like rewatch that scene and look at her face. That is like proud mama bear of like, yeah, that's right. She was so happy with herself, happy with her team, happy with the Padawan. Like everything was just coming together, and she hit those two troopers coming at her and was just like,
yeah,
"Oh yeah, that was awesome!" Like it was so good. So that was. I think those are my two favorite fight
like
scenes.
the action
What are
sequences.
yours? What are yours? Yeah.
So my
What stands out?
favorite, and this is not, it's like, and this is like, because this hit all these emotional notes. It's the fight in the woods,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So it's like, so it's the two Ronin on the road, and then the camera kind of backs up amongst the trees, and so like the I am I am a long time enjoyer of samurai movies. I have seen a lot of samurai movies. I've watched a lot of Kurosawa. I've watched a lot of like, and so like the influence that those movies then had on anime and the ways in which that has like affected Star Wars. Like we were talking about
Mm,
Star Wars Visions earlier, right? And
yeah.
so like the two Ronin on the road in like it's the white and brown and red background, like it's like you get all the same colors that are in like the Last Jedi and like there's all kinds of stuff, right? Because it's like
Hmm.
because you have to have white so that the blood shows up. Like that's like you see that in so many
Yeah.
action movies in general. Like there's got to be white so that the blood will show up. There's got to
Hmm.
be, there's got to be darkness so that it feels imposing and it feels like heavy and all that kind of stuff. And like the fight itself, it's not tremendously acrobatic. There's nothing in it that is just like, oh, what did I just see? But it's like it's a very like um it's got the vibe of like the impending menace and the
Hmm.
feeling of stakes that I really love from a fight scene.
Hmm.
There's a type of training that you'll do in some sword styles that it's basically named after a log bridge, and so if I start walking on a log bridge and another person starts walking on a log bridge, if especially if we are of like oppositional um, families, territories, whatever, right? I can't back up.
Mm,
I can't back up and let you cross. I need to cross. And if you're in the
right.
way, that's a you problem. That's not a me problem. And so there are drills of like you basically you sort of you and the other person kind of inch your way across a balance beam, and you have to time your attack so you get them and they don't get you. And the fight in the woods had that kind of because it's a very like very slow paced kind of like and it's
Mhm,
got that build of tension, and the action is over very quickly. It's not all that like it's not groundbreaking, it's not acrobatic, it's none of these things, but it's the moment that it happens, it's also over.
mhm.
And that's
Yeah. I like you said, it's not the flashiest fight, but I loved that fight as well
the vibe is so good.
because because of the vibe. Because Ahsoka this time, this is her second time going against that Inquisitor
Yeah,
person thing, right?
yeah,
And
the
this
weird
time
ghost
it's
person.
he's not catching her off guard this time. She's not messing around. She adjusts her stance. She's sizing him up, and she goes into full Anakin, maybe even a little Vader predator mode. She's not messing around this time. She's going for the kill. She's ending this. She doesn't care. She also reminds me a lot of Obi-Wan versus Maul in the desert, the final fight
Yeah,
of
similar
that
vibe to
when
that fight.
she finally goes and she's just like in a stance, ready to go. He starts spinning his little helicopter Inquisitor blade, and she's like, I don't care. This is already over. You just don't realize you're dead yet.
Yeah,
And she does that one little move, very similar to Obi-Wan, and it's over. But in her head, the way she was projecting that, the way she was moving, the way you said it was that methodical step for step, doesn't matter what you do. This fight, I'm already 2 steps ahead of you.
it's like
I've
an
gone
arrow.
against you once. I've gone against you once. There's not going to be a third time. Like that was this fight for
You have
me,
no
and it's
surprises
so
left for
freaking
me.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Um,
so good.
and then, truthfully, like, as much as I enjoyed Balin Skull as a character and everything else, um, the climactic fight when um, the Dathomir, like they infuse her and like the mystical sword that
Mm,
can block a lightsaber, all that. So she is an incredible martial artist, like incredible martial artist. So her dad um, is the keeper of a family style of Kali. It's a Philippine martial art, and he was buddies with Bruce Lee. So Bruce Lee is
mhm,
her godfather.
yep,
Um, but like she is a really, really good martial artist. And
yep,
so like getting to see her like really get to show off, like she got to show off a little bit in that fight scene in Mando where she had the
yep.
spear and stuff like that. Like getting to see her with a one-handed bladed weapon was just like, though it was just such a delightful treat. Um, and anybody that's on TikTok or Instagram, Big Bang Mike,
Yeah, yeah,
that's his mom.
yep.
I can't remember how old he was when she
So
adopted
Power
him.
Rangers and Three Ninjas.
Yeah, and
For anyone
and
that's
like a host of
unfamiliar,
other
yeah,
stuff.
great stuff. Yep,
Like been in acting and martial arts for a really long time.
yep,
Um, super good dude. Occasionally kind of controversial with his online persona because like
yep,
that works. Like when you're going to be a
yep.
creator, like create like
Yeah,
it's just like it's way easier to do that than to just be like, hey, no, hey, let's talk about the complexity of this. It's like no, just state your case and like do your hot take and then defend it. And it's like that's easier
yeah,
on social media. But
pretty
he's
much.
a good dude, good martial artist. Um, but like getting to watch her like be really awesome was like she's I don't want to like rank martial artists because I feel like that's unreasonable. But like her and Ray Park are the best
Mm,
like the best fight people that Star Wars has had in
yeah,
any property, anything. Like she's so good. I was really disappointed
yeah,
that they killed her off. They gave her a great fight scene and it was awesome and it was worth it. But I was really hoping we were going to get to see more of her because she's so good. God, she's so
yeah,
good.
yeah. Um, that was so beautifully choreographed too. That was the most, I'm gonna say, dancer esque fight of the two of them kind of dancing
So
around
yeah,
each other.
it was
We
so
saw a
fluid.
lot of power in some of the other fights, and this was very like evenly matched experts who were dancing with one another and just happened to have sharp,
Incredibly deadly
flaming,
weapons at the same time.
crazy, deadly weapons. Yeah, yeah, it was so good. That also kind of I wanna ask, and this seems like a good a time as any, from a martial arts expert perspective, Ahsoka's reverse grip, practical or purely
I mean,
aesthetic?
like, with a lightsaber, you can get away with it a little bit more, but
Okay.
it's so basically because it's such a deadly weapon. And if you think about it in this context, I'm holding a broken staff.
Right.
And so I don't fight like I'm fighting with swords. I fight like I'm fighting the staff. You can get away with it
Mm,
a little bit with a lightsaber because I don't have to worry about edge alignment. I don't have to, um, like, I don't have to put the same type of power in to cut somebody. If it's
right.
edged, I can't fight with edged weapons. That way it doesn't work. Um, and then, like, one of the other ways that Ahsoka fights sometimes where she's got a forehand and a crossguard grip. You'll see a lot of people in HEMA do variations on that because you use the crossguard grip hand as like
Mm.
basically like a shield. You
Oh,
use
okay.
it so
All right.
that like
Yeah.
this creates voids,
Right.
um, and your arm doesn't get tired as fast.
Hmm. All right. That makes sense.
Versus like the way that you have to hold a shield because you got so much more weight and things like that, and like having a
Right.
really big shield obstructs your vision, and so doing something where it's like you've got a shorter sword or something else that you do, and its job is basically to clear to create openings for your primary weapon. Um,
Interesting.
that's viable, and it works with edged weapons. But like in general, Ahsoka's fighting style, if you're using swords instead of lightsabers, not great. Um,
Right. Okay.
because if you're in cross grip, if you're using your sword like a knife, it works fine.
Mm.
But chopping, it's really difficult to deliver good edge power. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's like if you're using it like a knife, it's fine. And
Okay.
so like there's certain like ninjato like fighting styles that you're fighting against somebody with a sword, and so you technically have a sword, but your sword is so much shorter, you're using it
Mm.
like a dagger. Um,
Okay.
just like relative to the fight.
Yeah.
And so like when you look at the way the techniques work and things like that, like you have a sword. If you're using it like a knife instead of like a sword, you can get away with it. From a meta standpoint, if you reverse grip, you're giving a breach. You're limiting the number of attack vectors you can choose, because the way your arm moves if the blade is coming out this way is much more
Hmm.
limited, and so you can't deliver power on as many lines. So you make it so that the person protecting themselves doesn't have to account for as many things. The lightsaber lets you offset that because it's so deadly at just a tap.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's one of the reasons why. And so like it looks awesome, looks awesome.
Yep.
And it creates a lot of fun things that choreographers can do because it's like you get to
Mm.
have a sword and a staff at the same time with the same character. And so like
Hmm.
anytime you can have somebody changing how their weapon works in the middle of the fight without having to make them change weapons is like that allows you to do really cool stuff. And so like Ahsoka's
We.
fighting style doesn't translate outside of the Star Wars universe.
Right.
Would not change it for anything.
Yeah. And we saw that kind of switch with Anakin when he's going at Ahsoka and she's in the defensive, but he does something where he whips around and he turns around and he's holding it reverse grip for that final slash. And like you said, like it's just so deadly that he comes along with one and she blocks it, and that's when he stops. But he instantly flips it back right side up because he's Anakin. But like he even does that little switch at one point,
Well, and that's
just to
so you
again
were
just to make it more interesting.
well, and we are forever going to see people using swords or sword like weapons switch to reverse grip for on screen choreography because it solves a problem.
Mm. Yeah.
And now, if there's another person that also has to be in frame, you
Yeah.
can't see you can't see us at the same time. And
Hmm.
so, like, we will forever see reverse grip because it allows you to have a moment where your characters are
Yeah.
close face to face with their
Yeah.
weapons.
Yeah. Because I can pull it
And
back like
it's
this. I don't
and
worry
then
about
you
your
get
face
like
if it's
my
right there.
blade,
Yeah.
your blade, our faces are right next to each other.
Any other like memorable or like shout out fight scenes that maybe not your favorite, but like you just want to kind of shout them up before we start wrapping things up?
So a fight scene is a storytelling device, right? And in Star
Mm.
Wars, when you have a character that is using a lightsaber, your fight scenes are where you are showing them overcoming the stuff that they need to work on as a character, right? And so, like, the um, I've used a whole lot of non-Star Wars references, so we'll do another one. Samurai Jack. And so there is a scene in I don't it's one of the first seasons of Samurai Jack where Jack is fighting all of the anger and everything that he has towards Haku and what Haku has done to him, right? And so, like, and they
Hmm.
have this fight, and he is having to fight himself. He's fighting his anger,
Mm.
right? And it's winning until he stops and he sits down
Yeah.
and he processes this feeling that he was having to confront. But he processes the feeling. He processes all of this conflict of like like the selfish motivations and other things. Like he goes through it, and then he doesn't have to fight it anymore, and he can go back to
Mm.
fighting Haku. Because if you're fighting yourself, you can't fight them. And so
Yeah.
Sabine gets wrecked in that first fight with Shin Hati because she's fighting herself. She's not like she's fighting Shin, but she's fighting her own insecurity. She's fighting her own unwillingness to, like, you know, listen. Which is just like it's a Star Wars Padawan tradition is like, knowing better than your instructor and then having that be the root cause of all the problems that the story then has to solve. Um,
Hmm.
like that's not unique to. it's been a
It's
it's been
kind
a
of
trope
kind
of
of
many
life,
things.
right? Like it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Now listen, I'm going to try to explain this to you because my instructor tried to explain it to me, and then I went and I was a dumbass, and it's taken me, da 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 da. And so I want you to not be a dumbass, and so I'm going to explain it to you like this because I think if my instructor had explained it to me like that, I wouldn't have been a dumbass. Student goes on to be a dumbass,
Yep.
like because that's it's like that's part of
That's
it's what it
yeah.
is.
That's what we all do.
And when you need a story to have galactic level stakes, then you need the fuck up to be pretty significant so that it affects the whole galaxy with your selfishness. And like that's the like and so Sabine has like something that doesn't seem like it was a tremendous risk to take it back to the home space, like this home turf, so to speak, to deal with this information and this and whatever. And then that's where it goes wrong because it has to go wrong, otherwise
Mm.
the story's really boring. Um, and it just underlines the like because she doesn't have a home, she doesn't have places that she
Mm.
feels safe or whatever, she fits out, she doesn't fit in, which is like a key piece of her character's journey, both within the story now and wherever the story is going to be going. And then
Mm.
Ahsoka is like has all of this weight of like not being able to fix Anakin and having had to have been a child soldier and a child of war and inadvertently helping bring about the Galactic Empire. If the Jedi had been less good at winning fights alongside the clones, the Galactic Empire doesn't get to happen. But they did
Mm-hmm.
too good a job, so then it was able to go directly from that to Empire, right? And so and so Ahsoka has all of this that she's fighting with, and there's the specter of Anakin over her character. And so then they had to have the moment of like, no, he really did care.
Mm.
He really did. He really cared about you.
Yeah.
Which is like, there's certain like abusive spouse, abusive instructor, like he just didn't know how to communicate his feelings, and so he did horrific, irresponsible things to you. But he cared. He
Yeah.
just
In his own
absolutely played fast and loose with
murderous way.
ethics because he thought
Yeah.
he knew better. Um, and so
It happens.
that's,
A lovable scamp.
he's so adorable with his, you know, mass murder. Um,
Yeah.
what's a little? Well, he was a little. Who doesn't have a little?
What's a little mass murder? Um,
But that, and so like the fight scenes for Sabine as we see her grow until that final moment of like,
mm,
launching Ezra and like getting the pseudo joke because he almost misses and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's like the growth of Sabine, and then
mm,
the uh, then the isolation of, it's like, all right, so there was this problem, and now she doesn't have a choice. She's gonna have to work on it in order to get home. And so she
hmm
felt like she didn't have a home, and now that she can't get back, it's just like, oh crap, I did. Like I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I got to get back
Yeah.
to it
Yeah.
because they're gonna light it on
Her
fire.
growth was, yeah, yeah. Her growth was phenomenal in this. That was like kind of the real story, and it was growing. You saw it in both Master and Apprentice, or Padawan, or whatever. With this, with where Ahsoka had to deal with her own demons, and Sabine had to deal with hers, and they kind of helped each other, but also kind of had to do it in their own way. And for Sabine, it was a lot of accepting both parts. And I loved, there's a part in the battle, the fight in the woods, where it shows her helmet laying down on the ground, and it was like she was trying
I know
to
exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
dismiss the Mandalorian part of herself, but when she picks the helmet up during that final fight, it was like, oh, she's accepting both, and she's going through stormtroopers, she's blasting, she's lightsaber, she's like, that's her. She's a mix. Stop fighting either part, accept both, because that's what
and,
makes you whole.
and
And
allow
it
them
is
to integrate.
so good.
Like, it's like, rather
Yeah,
than I am form 5, I am that, like, I'm gonna allow it to.
yeah,
It's like, it's pastels, it's
yeah,
charcoals. Like,
yeah.
you gotta rub it together in order for it to work.
So great, so great.
And then and
The
like uh, the all of the Ahsoka journey of the like, I want to work alone. I don't want to be responsible for somebody else's development. It was just like, I'm like, Ahsoka does to Sabine everything Anakin did to her.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
like all the, and does it in a different way, and it's definitely like a like the character wanting to be different and having to reconcile all of the complexity of that relationship and things like that. I feel like they were a little
yeah.
bit more gentle to Anakin than I would have been, but I also like,
Mm,
I've made a lot of content about how much of an affront to my profession he is, and so
mm,
like,
yeah, yeah. The only other thing I want to call out is, and I talked about this last episode, so I won't harp on it too long.
mhm.
Um, the fight scene, and I love my lightsaber choreography. We were talking about it for a while here, but the fight scene of Ezra saying he doesn't need a lightsaber and just using the Force, and how that dynamic played, and we saw, to me, it was kind of the Maul's apprentice moment for me, because we had that great hallway scene with Maul, and Ahsoka
Oh,
frees him from the prison, and he goes through the hallway and he uses the Force and the hallway as his weapon against all the troopers and everything. And this was Ezra kind of like, Maul really wanted him to be his apprentice, and it's like, oh, Maul would be so happy right now of you just like stopping a lightsaber with your hands and the Force, and just being just this destructive force with the Force is like, okay, yeah,
well, and
yeah.
like,
Maul's smiling somewhere.
and so uh, we've seen the Force as a weapon a lot of times,
Yeah.
but Ezra's a Jedi, and so the Force is a shield,
Mhm.
right? And that's like right now we're on Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Yeah.
But so there are a number of Aikido is a really good example, and I'm 100% all aboard the train of if we are going to make the Jedi more like Aikido, I'm in. There are some martial artists that would just be like, no, 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 it should be like this, whatever. I don't know, like more like Aikido. I'm in. That sounds good. I'm I'm so in. Um, but like there are a number of techniques within Aikido where it's just like, all right, now you're going to do this thing that you normally do with a sword, and we're going to take the sword away,
Mm,
and you're going to do it without the sword. And now they have a sword, and so you got to change it a little bit so that you don't lose your fingers. But
right.
like it's sword with no sword, like that kind of thing. And like that's a like I have a soft spot for that because I really like you think about Captain America, right? Like it's the shield. The shield has been used by some writers to kill.
Hmm.
Like it has been used to kill. But in
Yep.
general, like part of the genesis of it is like the shield is there because it's to protect people, and that's the Jedi. It's
Yep.
like it's the Force is there to protect people. It's there to preserve life.
Yeah.
Even Balin not wanting to destroy Ahsoka. Part of that is I feel like Balin probably has like an Ubermensch kind of a thing where it's like no, 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 like we're better than everybody. Like it's not their fault. They
Yeah.
didn't ask to be born normal, but like we have the
He said he's better. He said straight up to Shin. It's the Jedi and the Sith both failed. I trained you to be something more, something better. Like he knows he's better than everyone.
Homelander,
Jedi, Sith,
just like a
regular
slightly
people.
different, like like that kind of
Yeah.
that and Dooku is kind of in that same zone too, like but that it's like, but that and that desire to it's like like I don't want to kill a fellow superior being if I don't have to, because we're just they're plebeians, like that's what they're for. They're there to be
Yeah.
underfoot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. And so we'll see, like God knows what they're gonna do moving forward with his character, because like you hate to recast it because on one hand like he did such an amazing job,
Mm,
and to change
yeah.
the actor, but by the same token if he just like disappears into the mist, it's also like
I think that's such a disservice to everything that he set up. Um, yeah, it's tough.
and I don't know what the right answer is there, because I agree with the case for both options, because but that's
I can see the argument for both. I Because I love the character so much, I kind of lean a little bit more into please like recast, but do it like thoughtfully. Find the right person who can uh, use that same level of gravitas and the same imposing kind of
which is a big ask.
figure.
Like it's a big
Very
ask,
big. So I think they really need to
because I
do it
don't even know
right.
who I would. I
But
don't even know who I would list.
I saw Liev Shriver being
Okay,
tossed around.
I'd be on board for that. I
Imposing
love
guy,
him.
same age, same height, similar build, good actor. I think
Yeah,
maybe could be one of the few people
one of the
that
only times I've
I've
ever liked
seen that I'm like,
Sabretooth,
let's see that.
like as depicted,
Yeah,
like did such a great job
yeah,
with that character, and that's a tough character to make
yeah,
likable. Like,
very much so. Yeah, um, very much so. So I could see that one. Um, I think we could talk all night, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So I'm going to, I think, end things here and give you this last couple of minutes. First off, just thank you for joining me for talking this long about Star Wars and fight scenes. And
I've had a
this
blast. I'm
has
glad
been
we
an
made it
episode
happen.
I've been looking up. I've been looking forward to, and this came about. You said the writer strike ended, and you made a TikTok saying like any
I
creators,
want to
any
talk about
content
Ahsoka
creators,
and Good Omens
podcasts,
too.
whatever. That was it. And I would like instantly message you like, dude, let's go. Cause yeah, instantly. And so it's been since the writer strike ended that we've been kind of talking for anyone that wants the behind the scenes of how we set
How the
up guests and
sausage is
stuff.
made.
Uh, so thank you so much for coming on, for joining us again. Please tell people, if they're not already following you, where they can, and what you're doing.
All right, and so if you look up Level Up Light on basically any social media platform, that'll get you to me. On TikTok, I am Level Up Light 1, 2, and 3. Because there were some stretches there where, like, if I did certain types of Saber content, I would get temporary bans.
Right.
I've
Yeah.
now been far enough away from any of my stuff getting flagged that
Mm.
but I was in like a tenuous position there for a little bit um where if I had something get flagged, then I was going to have like 2 weeks without being able to post, comment, whatever. And so it was just like, "Argh."
Rough.
And so then I started a second account, and then somewhere in there, it got its first content violation warning, which, like, ultimately, like, every content violation I've had has been successfully appealed, but the
Yeah.
nature of the way that they do it is, like, even if you win your appeal, it's still sort of like a mark, because they don't, like, it's
Yeah.
there's not an easy way to moderate the amount of content they get. And so I understand that
Yeah.
it's an impossible problem. But, like, when the second one caught um a content warning, I was just like, oh crap. And then I made a third one. It was just like, all right, here we are now. I have 3 accounts. Okay. And mostly I'm on Level Up Light 1 because I can't remember the last time I had anything get flagged. But
That's good.
yeah, it's better that way. But
Yeah.
yeah, Level Up Light 1, Level Up Light on Instagram, um, Level Up Sabers on the YouTubes. Um, but I would be very happy to answer questions about lightsabers from anybody. Talk Star Wars, um, encounter your content. Any cosplayers that might be listening to this, if I'm not already following you, I would love to be. I try to um, uh, anybody that anybody that's following me that does a lot of cosplay content, I try to follow them back because it makes it easier for people to ask me questions and things like that. So if I'm not yet, hit me in my comments. Um, so that I know that you fell through the cracks on me, and I can rectify that. But yeah, Level Up Light 1, Friendly Neighborhood Master Allen. I am findable. Um, all places where social media is sold.
Absolutely. And the lightsaber site for people that want to go buy a lightsaber that's guaranteed better than a stick.
Friendly
Over at
Neighborhood
Level Up
Master Allen
Sabers.
invites you to visit levelupsabers.com, the only lightsaber guaranteed better than a stick.
Perfect. Master Allen, thank you so
I
much
couldn't
for
look at the
joining
video
me.
while I was doing
We
it. I was going to lose.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone that was listening. You can find me at _Canardian pretty much everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, my 2 main places. And you can also hang out with me and all the other Secret Friends Unite people over on our Discord channel, where we have channels and places for Star Wars, Star Trek, video games, all the different things. You can talk about what you want to and pick what you want to do over there. Thank you so much for listening, watching. And again, Alan, thank you for joining us. And as always, may the Force be with you.
We'll have to make
Rex?
it so that it's not as long in between next time.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Any excuse to get you back on,
We'll figure it out.
I'm happy to do,
You know how to
for
reach me.
sure. Yes. Rex, play us out.